that's that one. Let me, I want to shift over to taking a look at maybe some practitioner stuff now with Mintzberg, famous Canadian scholar of management. To me, legendary, one of my real heroes, a real independent thinker. And so in his book, 7 Myths on Management, he talks about these topics: how to develop managerial experience, how to develop leaders, and then the difference between managers, leaders, and then the effect of the MBA on the actual practice of management and leadership. And so he found in his research of hundreds and thousands of case studies, what he describes as 7 myths about leadership and management. The first one, the orchestra conductor, is that a lot of people think that an orchestra conductor is a good analogy for management, but Mintzberg says no. In fact, it's not a good model, because it's more like, let's see if I can get that. Yeah, there we go. It's more like a rehearsal for the orchestra, where there's just learning the music, where everything is going wrong at the same time. So when you think of a symphony, you got professional musicians that are all world-class masters of their instrument and their machine, and everybody's role is clear, and there's a very clear boundary of their roles in the instrument and the way the music is scored in the symphony. And so maybe it's more like jazz in that sense than a symphony, but he says it's not as centrally planned and well-known and with clear boundaries. And he says managers, rather than being decisive and confident and assertive, ought to be more concerned about, all those are important. He says more important that you should be flexible and adaptable, because you're really trying to deal with chaos and not knowing what's going to happen next. So that ability to be adaptive is actually more important than, say, the confidence or clarity or decisive action, that kind of stuff. Flexibility more important. He says it's a mistake to make a distinction between managers and leaders. And here's what happens. If you're a leader who doesn't, I want to call it a lanager for some reason. If you are a leader who doesn't manage well, you're disconnected and you don't know what's going on. So that's not much of a leader. But a manager who can't lead offers no inspiration to employees to try to strive. And you really, it emphasizes the risk of your weak areas more than anything. So you got to really, he says, heads and tails, everybody is both a manager and a leader. He says to be careful of the pervasiveness of the MBA, which is a belief in the power of the classroom to create leaders and or managers, and that MBAs are not sufficient to make a person into a manager or a leader, and that all you can really do in the classroom is help already established managers operate at a higher level, and they have to have that experience base to tap into. Otherwise, the classroom lessons are not grounded. So that's sort of the practice or the profession, the craft knowledge, he says, must be grounded first in experience, and then to be able to negotiate the professional space. He says context matters, that there's not necessarily a leader for every single thing or situation, that sometimes the contingency and context matters, and that the style and the impact and the importance and the methods of leadership should vary based on that like contingency theory, as we saw from the last briefing. That leaders and managers are both born and made, not born or made, that you need both of those, the onboard wiring, if you will, your hardware and software, but also what you've been able to experience directly, and then your ability to make connections between theory and practice. That's important guidance for us in this scholar practitioner program, for example. And then finally, he says there's really no single magic formula. He found no less than 39 qualities for being effective. And obviously no one person is ever going to have all of them to the maximum extent. And there's no real magical formula that gives you the perfect blend or the mix or the critical path through all those, but that at some time, all of those skills and proficiencies are going to be required. and are more or less important. And so it may be that the consultations or the group efforts or the group mind, the team approach, might be the union of all the individual skills, and then our ability to blend the qualities of individuals for the good of the group may be more important than any single set of skills. And he actually does have collaboration and team building as a couple of those 39 qualities. And so maybe that's an important area of emphasis for us as we think about professional judgment. Okay.